This video is in response to Annoyed Cat Annoyed's video about the anorexia. I was listening to her video this morning and it reminded me of a patient that I took care of about 8 years ago. And the patient was a 16-year-old Chinese boy. He was first generation and lived with his first generation family in San Francisco. They were first generation family FOB, to be politically incorrect. They didn't speak any English. And the father worked long 16-hour days, and the mother, they had one son only, and the mother stayed home all day with her son. He was in high school at Mission High School in San Francisco, and in fact they lived down on Mission Street in a small apartment, one-bedroom apartment. And I looked at the paperwork before I went over there. The patient was 16 years old and 5 foot tall, and he weighed 80 pounds. And he had been struggling with anorexia. And we attempted to treat him at home. So when I got to the home and met him and his mother and toured the one-bedroom apartment, the first thing that I realized was that there was only one bedroom. And I asked him where he slept at night. And he said that he slept with his mother and father in the same bed with his mother and father. And I went on to ask him about his regular daily activities, and basically he had none. A regular 16-year-old boy growing up in San Francisco, I would expect that he was learning how to drive a car, playing sports, doing the things that 16-year-olds do. And here he was staying at home, taking care of his mother, and starving to death. Or rather, she was starving him to death, as it turned out. Munchausen's by proxy. The mother was fixated on him remaining a child, an innocent child, staying at home. The father was never home. She was dependent on him. And in some sick way, she decided that he was never going to grow up. He was going to remain innocent, and he was going to stay at home. And in order to do that, she just didn't feed him. And after several attempts at making a menu and following up with him 3 times a week, we ended up hospitalizing him. And he eventually was pulled from the family for his own safety. Fast forward to today, to my life, and I see a lot of that same pattern repeating itself in Jehovah's world. In Jehovah's world, we have an excessive amount of structure in the home. And I noticed about 2 months ago that a lot of that structure was around what time the kids go to bed, how many meetings they go to, how much they eat, etc., etc., etc. And that's when I started looking at videos online, first for educational purposes. Not that I didn't already know that the whole religion is bullshit. However, One wants to be supportive, but the real wake-up call was, I believe J.W. Fairytale made the point that this is just like an addiction. And with an addiction, the more you enable these people, the sicker they get. And the sicker you get as an enabler. And the sicker the family gets. They don't need to be enabled. These people don't need to be told, it's okay, I'll support you. You go to your meetings because it's good for you, and I'll take care of everything else. And generally, that's what's expected in that type of family, especially if you've been born and raised in a family like that. The woman takes on the role of the enabler and the caretaker. Make sure the meals are prepared, make sure everybody gets out to their meetings, and takes care of the children while Dad goes out and goes door to door and performs as an elder and all of this other happy horse shit. And looking at it from the perspective of it being a destructive addiction that needs to be nipped in the bud. And I'm not stupid. I'm a recovering drug addict. And maybe being in that position, the last person to recognize that, wait a minute. In order to get someone to wake up to that, you have to disengage. Disengaging means, I'm not going to participate in this bullshit anymore. I'm just going to call it as I see it. So, you got meetings to go to, yeah, go to your meetings, but you're going to have to fix your own dinner. And the kids aren't going with you because it's sick and it's unhealthy. And by the way, the whole thing's a lie. And the theology's a lie. It's all a lie. But you're on your own. You do your own thing. Just recognizing ultimately there are consequences. And those consequences could include, as the kids get older, if they're not involved in that, they're going to grow up, they're going to have a life, and you're not going to be included in that life. That's part of the consequences, just like with an alcoholic or a drug addict. If they continue to go out and shoot their dope, smoke their crack, get drunk, come home late every night, everybody else lives their life around them or eventually just moves on. And that person has to be accountable for the consequences. And that's how I see it. So back to the food thing. There were all of these bizarre controls being put around food. You can only have 2 snacks a day. Only 1 helping at dinner time. And it's like, what are we living on food stamps? We're not living on food stamps. The kids are growing. They're hungry. They can eat whatever they want as long as it's not junk. What kind of bullshit is that? I mean, besides religious, insanity, now we're going to impose all of this other insanity on them? No. No. I have to stand up and say no. This is not going to happen, not on my watch. And the sad thing about it is, after years and years and years of living with that, it's very insidious. It's just crept up on me. And again, as being the codependent, it does creep up on you. And it starts out gradually. And then initially, He was the one that was anxious. He was the one that was depressed. And then after a while, I'm the one anxious. I'm the one depressed. Then the kids start getting anxious and the kids start getting depressed. So that is symptomatic of the disease. And I'm just, it's really cool to see a more modern version of recovery going on the internet. I mean, I don't know what I would do if it wasn't for people getting online and telling their stories. I mean, where would we go? Where would people go today? 30 years ago, when there was a problem, drugs, alcohol, whatever's going on, you could maybe go to a hospital or go to an AA meeting. It's not quite like that today. Yeah, you can still go to an AA meeting if you have a problem with alcohol, but what about a problem like this? Who do you talk to? Who do you go to? Anandu 2, excellent story. I enjoyed every bit of it. JW Fairy Tale, I enjoyed every bit of it. It's like a soap opera, and everything he said was true, and I laughed my ass off and sometimes cried. I mean, it was just so true. The story, so true. The cruelty that goes on, the cliques. Anandu 2 talked about being an outsider in a loving community that has Jehovah's blessings. I remember going to my very first meeting at the hall. Talk about being an outsider. People avoid you like the plague. And someone at the hall was disfellowshipped. I had no clue what that was. And it was so wrong. It was so pathetic that people behave that way. But worse than that, after, and I'm not a witness, but after the meeting, the gossip. Just recently visiting my mother-in-law, she's scurrying around the house. She's nervous as a cat. I've got the overseers are coming over and I have to make dinner. Oh, she's nervous as a cat. But her and her friends are all gossiping about who's coming over for dinner that night. What are they going to wear? What are they going to talk about? So hypocritical. It's such bullshit. No different than any other group of people. Anywhere. That's just a snapshot of my opinion. I have a lot of opinions to share, but I wanted to talk about the anorexia. And again, that to me is Munchausen's by proxy. This idea of imposing your own insanity and mental illness onto your children and literally making them sick behind it. It's just fucking sick.